Bremner Morris, the king of North Quad.
No.
Well, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me. Did not realize that was anything close to my title, but I love it.
Oh, I think it's your unofficial title
Okay,
anyway.
cool.
It's so good to see you.
Good to see you too.
Um, Lots to catch up on. I'm obviously doing this to sort of fill everyone in on what everyone's been up to the last 15 years.
Yeah,
I saw you a bunch when we both lived in SF.
yeah.
So I know a little bit, but I know you're also now in Boulder,
Mhm.
not to give away a little too much.
Yeah,
But tell me what you've been up to these last 15 years and where you are now.
yeah, sure. Um, 15 years. So after graduating Claremont, I spent a little bit of time in LA, probably about 6 to 9 months, and then realized that I really wanted to go back to the Bay.
Yeah.
And figured out a way to get back to San Francisco via investment banking. And so I got into investment banking for about 3 or 4 years.
Oh, awesome.
And it was so clear that that was not for me. Like I don't really like to follow rules all that much, and
Yeah.
I sort of balk at authority and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And there were a few moments in banking where, as an example, one of the managing directors on a Friday pulled me into his office. He's like, "Hey, on Monday, I really need to know whether you want to be an investment banker or you want to have long hair." And you don't have to say anything; just show up, and I'll know. And my hair was like longer than this.
Yeah.
I kind of got a little bit of a mullet going on right now, but it was a true mullet. And I just showed up with the mullet like fully out, and I was like, we both know that I don't want to be an
Yeah.
investment banker.
Yeah.
So that was like oil and water for about 4 years, but really great experience.
Yeah. Sure.
And there were a few CMCers who ended up working there after the fact. So that was fun to be able to bring folks into this small bank in San
Yeah.
Francisco.
Yeah.
But just by accident, I met a founder of an early stage startup at the gym. And at the time, he had about 10 people on his team. And he reached out to me at the gym. He's like, "Hey, I really like that workout. Could you teach me how to do what you're doing?" And so
Yeah.
we got to know each other over probably 6 months of seeing each other at the gym.
Yeah.
And then as they were starting to scale that business, he stopped me at the gym and said, "Hey, we really want people who are gonna come at problems that we're trying to solve with sort of a naive attitude, like somebody who
Mm.
hasn't been in the
Mm.
technology space before, so you can kind of look at things with a first principles
Yeah. Sure.
view of what should be done within this business. So would you like to join and be our first business hire?" And that was a company called,
Amazing.
yeah, it was cool. It was a company called AppDirect. I really should not
Yeah.
have been given that amount of responsibility at that phase. But yeah, so I jumped into this company that was 10 people, maybe 15 people at the time. And over 5 years, that grew to about 700 people.
Yeah. I know people at AppDirect. That's
Yeah. Oh,
crazy.
really?
I didn't realize that was the story.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and then the cool thing was it kind of became this really nucleus family.
Yeah.
And there were a few CMCers who ended up working there as well. But my job there was essentially just to incubate all the various different go-to-market functions of the business, and
Yeah.
without knowing how to run a sales team, figure out how we should be structuring sales and how to think about our team, what the team structure should look like, what the pitch should look like, and then finally what the leadership of that team should look like once I graduated
Sure.
off of incubating it.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so I did that over and over again for every function on the go-to-market side.
Yeah.
And then realized that I wasn't super into enterprise software. It was a really intriguing business, but
Yeah.
I kind of wanted to do something a little bit more tied to creativity and tied to the consumer side.
Yeah.
And I was looking to start a business that was working with content creators, and ended up finding Patreon, which was essentially the leader in helping content creators take control of their monetization and build a sustainable lifestyle.
Of course.
And so ended up jumping into Patreon in a similar phase where they hadn't hired anybody on the business side. They needed somebody who wasn't addicted to a playbook on the sales side or a playbook on the marketing side to kind of come in and help figure this thing out.
Yeah.
And so I did that for Patreon for about 4 years.
Wow.
And that whole time was in San Francisco. In the background, I was, cycling every morning with, started out with Will Rossiter, who was a year below us.
Yeah, of course. Shout out Will Rossiter.
Shout out Will Rossiter. And it was just him and me for, probably a month or two. And then Steve Andron joins. Shout out to Steve.
Yeah. Shout out Steve Andron, of course.
And then Tui was always.
I was gonna say Tui. Yeah. I think shout out Ryan Tui. But I think of you two as like the dynamic duo of biking up to what is that like
Hawk
Mount?
Hill.
Is that Hawk Hill? Right, exactly. Yeah.
Tui and I. I didn't mention him first because it's like he was attached to my hip at the in the entire experience.
Right.
But yeah, Tui and I would climb up to the top of Mount Tam. We had a birthday tradition that we would climb to the top of Mount Tam, get there before sunrise, and have beer at the as sun rose.
That's awesome.
Ride back down.
That's awesome.
Going to work.
That's awesome.
Yeah, but that turned into like a really great community in San Francisco.
Yeah,
building a cycling team that was about like 200 people.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
It was awesome. It was just like this really fun time where each of us didn't have a lot of responsibilities. We were working hard, but like we were just going on these massive adventures all around the Bay Area.
Yeah, look, I was in San Francisco for part of that period, and I never cycled with you. I didn't have a bike, what have you, but like I actually moved in with Josh Siegel.
Oh, yeah.
Shout out Josh Siegel.
Yeah.
And I think I took over for Will Rossiter or something like that. And so like I was aware of your founding of this biking club from the, earliest stages, and then seeing it grow, and you guys were like a crew,
Well, the thing that's really cool, I'm not involved in that anymore.
There's
the San Francisco Cycling Club still exists, and
that's awesome.
It's now like almost 400 people.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
And they've got a really a cool identity, and they're like the entry point for people who want to get into cycling but aren't like super competitive and trying to race. And that said, though, they're like a bunch of people who've graduated out of it and become Cat 1 near pro racers, which is really cool.
Dude, that's amazing. That's so cool.
So it's cool to
that's
see like
so cool.
That literally started with like Tui, me, Will Rossiter, Andrew, Siegel,
And did you, I don't remember, did you like cycle at Claremont?
I did a little bit.
Okay.
So I ran at Claremont for my junior year, and then for a variety of reasons decided to no longer run. And then Petrus and I, shout out to Petrus.
Yeah, of course. Shout out Petrus, of course.
Petrus and I just got out on the bike, and Petrus was a phenomenal cyclist. Like he raced in high school. He was a daredevil descender, sincerely. Like we would climb that Baldy, and
of course.
There were moments where he had this like, it was a stupid, he called it like the super tuck, where he put his hands behind his back and then put his chest on the front handlebars as we were descending Baldy. And I'm a very timid descender, so I was just watching him just fly down this mountain.
Oh my God.
So yeah, Petrus and I got into cycling for a while down in Claremont. But it really the addiction took hold in San Francisco.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah. Had a really great time in San Francisco. And during that time met my wife, and
talk to me about her.
Yeah. So her name's Maddie.
Love Maddie.
Yeah.
Shout out Maddie.
And Maddie and I actually met through AppDirect.
Oh, cool.
And the story was that it's somewhat CMC related. There was a house in LA that was Petrus, and then a couple of Pomona guys, Andrew Sylvester, Sly, and a few other folks. And Jack Adams went to high school with Sly, and
no way.
He lived with them, and he was Maddie's one of Maddie's really close family friends from Minnesota. And so
amazing.
Maddie at one point quit her job in New York and decided to move to San Francisco, like completely sight unseen.
Wow.
At one point when she showed up, she was like, "Oh, I thought that Seattle that was the place that I was visiting when I had this vision of San Francisco."
Oh my God.
So she got there and she's like, "Okay, I literally know nobody. And
wow.
I need to figure out like, a career, and I need to figure out all that. So Jack introduced her to like everybody within our crew. A lot
Oh my
of folks
goodness.
like Will Hamlin,
Yeah.
and Max Eulenstein and a bunch of Pomona folks who I was really good friends with in San Francisco. And so she had coffee dates with like all of our friends
No
to
way.
just
Oh
like
my
get to
God.
know people.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and so then we had a coffee date, and she was like, "Yeah, I'm interested in App Direct. Would love to, to apply to a job there." And she ended up getting the job. And then about 6 months in, we were like, "Wait a sec, we kind of are interested in each other. We'd love to date,
Yeah.
but we're working together,
Yeah.
so this can't happen."
Yeah.
And then we were like, you know what? Who cares?
These things happen. Yeah, totally.
App Direct's
Totally.
cool, but
Yeah.
but I don't think either of us ever anticipated that it was going to lead to marriage
That's so
and
amazing.
kids and stuff like that. So
That's so amazing.
yeah,
Yeah. You and I texted to like sort of schedule this, of course.
yeah,
You just also made mention kids.
yeah,
So talk to me about family life with Maddie now.
yeah. So Maddie and I, we have a son. His name's Bowen.
Love it.
He's a year and a half old. He was born.
The rightful heir to North Quad.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I actually Louis Albanese. Shout out Louis Albanese. He sent us a I love CMC stag shirt that
I love it.
he wears way too frequently.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and Maddie's like, anybody who is married to a CMCer sort of gets adopted into the CMC crowd.
100%. 100%.
Shout out Mara Fincy. I don't know if anybody will know Mara Fincy,
Yeah.
but Willinger's wife. She'll hate that I mentioned her because I often ask, I was like, what year did you graduate at CMC? But anyways, there's this crew of folks who are married to at least the San Francisco crew of CMCers who are so they love it, but they're also just so frustrated with how tight and like how how much we push CMC as like this mecca and this which it is.
Totally. Yeah, it is. I totally agree. Agree.
So Bowen, we'll see. He can make his own decisions, but
of course,
the path has already been written.
Right.
Yeah. So we have Bowen, a year and a half old, and then Maddie's pregnant with our second. And
congratulations.
Yeah, and it's another boy, and he's
amazing.
due in late July. So we'll have two boys under 2.
That's awesome.
Yeah, which will be exciting. It'll be daunting, but it'll be exciting.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Man, that's amazing. I'm so glad to hear it. Congratulations. That's awesome to hear.
Yeah.
I also know you're no longer in San Francisco.
Yeah. So related to Patreon, it was like late 2019, I was trying to figure out what the next phase of my career at Patreon looked like. And there was an opportunity to run international for Patreon and move to Berlin.
Oh my God.
So I was like Maddie and I both thought about, hey, it's probably time to leave San Francisco. She really wanted to have an adventure and get out of San Francisco. And I was, I'd lived there. I was born and raised there and then lived there after graduation. So I was up for a new experience. And we were ready to move to Berlin. We packed up our apartment. We were like, ready to have this life adventure. And
I can see you in Berlin, by the way.
I spent some time in Berlin.
You would have done well. Yeah.
It definitely would have played up on some other the partying. But anyway, so we were about to move in March of 2020, and
say no more.
That fell through.
Oh my God!
And that year we were also supposed to get married with big normal wedding. And we obviously didn't move to Berlin. We turned around and we were like, okay, our apartment's essentially packed up. We were going to have this life adventure. There's not really anything interesting for me at Patreon in San Francisco. Maddie was working at Uber at the time. It was just a gnarly time to be working at Uber during the beginning of the pandemic. And so we're like, let's just take advantage of this moment of the world standing still. Let's pack up our apartment, put it in storage, and then we hopped in a Subaru with a tent and lived out.
Oh my God!
Yeah, we lived out in national parks for about 4 months.
Oh my God!
Yeah,
dude.
which
that's the way to do it.
Early days was super tent living, and we were having a true gritty adventure. And then as the months went on, it was like, we should get an Airbnb for a few days. And
right, a hot shower would be real nice. Yeah.
So that was we essentially just adventured for a while.
Oh, that's
Went
amazing.
all across the Northwest, made it out to Minnesota, where Maddie's from, and then
Okay.
spent some time there, and then came down through Colorado and Arizona, and then back to California. Checked out
Wow.
Boulder while we were on that journey, and ended up having an Airbnb in Santa Barbara for like a month, and that turned into a
Mm.
year. We were like,
Oh my God.
great place to just spend some time, be outdoors, learn how to surf.
Yeah.
Maddie's brother was living there at the time, so spent some time
Oh
with
man,
him.
that's awesome.
And that we've never intended to live in Santa Barbara for a year, but
Yeah.
loved
Yeah.
it. And then we were moving to Minnesota, or we were actually moving to Colorado, to Boulder, and we were making a stop in Minnesota. Just to spend time with Maddie's family. And the week that we got there, we found out she was pregnant with Bowen.
Oh my God.
So she was like, "Yeah, we're gonna have our son near my family." So
Yeah.
we both ended up living in Minnesota for a full year, which was
No way.
never not necessarily part of the plan. I love Minnesota,
Yeah.
love the Twin Cities,
Yeah.
but we had Bowen in October, and I think maybe 3 weeks later it snowed. And it didn't stop snowing until we left in March.
Oh my
we,
God.
we moved to Boulder in like late March, and we had 7 feet of snow in the driveway in
Oh
Minnesota
my
as we
God.
left.
Oh
So
my
yeah,
God. That's crazy.
so I truly got to experience like a Minnesota winter with a
Yeah.
newborn.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Yeah, so then we've been in Boulder for just over a year now, and it's
That's
awesome. Yeah,
amazing.
we love it. It's a really cool,
Yeah.
blend of Midwest values,
Yeah.
but it still has a lot of the entrepreneurial energy that I really loved when I was living in San Francisco.
Yeah.
So
Not just that, but like, look, I can see you doing really well in Boulder. It's got a great cycling
yeah,
community slash like outdoor adventure,
yeah,
get outside and work out and do something great thing. It's also like cool for creators,
totally.
right? Like I
Yeah,
think there's actually a decent consumer vibe there,
yeah, yeah,
That's awesome, man. That's really awesome.
yeah. The cool thing about it is it definitely has a scene, but it's very like frontier oriented. It's people trying to
Sure.
like people choose to live to Boulder or move to Boulder
Yeah.
versus one of the tech hubs because they want to have access to the outdoors, but they also want to kind of like create something here. There's like a bit of a chip on the shoulder in Boulder, which
Sure.
I mean, as a CMCer, that's kind of like you know a sentiment that a lot of us carry from our time at CMC.
Totally. Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
So yeah, we love it, and access to nature, the cycling. There's a ski resort that's like 30 minutes up the hill from us.
Oh my God. Amazing.
Yeah, and it's crazy how integrated skiing is into life here.
That's great.
As I've been networking, I've been reaching out like, hey, you want to grab a coffee? And somebody's like, well, it's going to be 6 or 7 inches, so let's just go grab like 3 or 4 runs. That'll be our coffee,
Oh
and
my
then
God.
you can
Oh
be
my
back
God.
down by lunch.
I'm going to be Zillowing places
Yeah.
in Boulder right after this call, Brem.
Seriously, if anybody who watches this wants to move to Boulder,
Yeah.
just hit me up.
Yeah. That's amazing.
Yeah,
That's amazing.
yeah,
So what are you doing in Boulder now? Tell
yeah.
me a little bit about that.
So after I left Patreon, I launched by accident this little consulting business, and it was born off of being on the road.
Mm,
We were literally living out of a car, and I had a lot of companies that kind of looked like Patreon reach out
mm,
and say, "Hey, we saw that you left Patreon. Could you join us as like the head of go-to-market or the VP of revenue?" And my reply was like, "Look, I'm literally living out of a car.
yeah.
I don't have internet, but I could like find a hotel one day a week, and we could figure out a way to consult."
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
also at these early stage businesses, my pitch was that, hey, look, you're early enough that you don't need to hire somebody in that position. You need
Sure.
the
Sure.
folks who can, drive marketing or drive sales or the actual doers on the team. You need those
Yeah.
folks. And then you need somebody to help you sort of figure out the strategy and understand where you should be investing your resources. But that person
Yeah.
doesn't need to be a full-time person. That person can be,
Right.
somebody who guides you around corners one day a week.
Right.
And so that just by accident became a business.
Yeah.
And so I've been running that consulting business for the past like 2.5, 3 years.
That's amazing.
With like some brief interludes, one of which one of the companies I was advising, the founders decided to go do something else. And it was a creator oriented platform. It was in Web3, which was like not necessarily something that I was super, I wasn't searching for anything in Web3, but it was also in 2022 when that was like the hype cycle.
Sure.
And so got involved with that company, was advising them for a little while. And then the founders said, "Hey, would you like to be the CEO of this company?"
Wow.
And that was cool. I mean, I stepped in and adopted a team of about 50. It was a company that was really in that hype cycle of Web3. But also got to see the sort of the guts of the Web3 industry, and the fact that like a lot of those businesses don't really have product market fit.
Sure.
And a lot of them raised a bunch of capital early on and didn't necessarily know where and how to deploy that capital. It was sort of just participating in the hype cycle. So that experience was adopt a company that looked like it was off to the races, start figuring out it's not going to work from a product market fit standpoint. The Web3 market started to tank, and recognize, oh, this thing might need to be a wind down situation versus like a growth. So ended up having to like wind that company down, which was a tough experience, a good experience, but a tough experience.
Look, I've been there too, to be honest with you. And I've learned so much in those like experiences. So, it's never fun, right? But my God, what an amazing learning experience.
Yeah, it was great. And it was also an interesting sort of personal learning experience, because I jumped into that CEO role mainly because I let my ego take over. And I was like, oh, this would be great to like have a CEO credential, But I knew that in my heart, that wasn't what I wanted to be doing with my life. And if it had gone well, I probably would have just like kept riding that ego train.
Sure.
But as it started to, as it became clear that it was going to be a wind down situation, it forced me to sort of look inside and be like, okay, what's really important? And related to that, that was right when we found out that Maddie was pregnant with Bowen. So gosh, of course I'm going to like start tearing up and almost crying on this freaking interview.
I love it. Cry, man. Cry on the show.
and everybody who watches this will be like, of course, Brett, like freaking pulled out the tears. But at that moment, it's like, okay, I just want to be a dad. That is the
that's most important man, dude, you're gonna make me cry.
So, anyways, that was just such a clarifying moment of like what life is all about for me. And so after I left that company, Rally, I just focused on being a dad.
That's amazing.
And it was that end of that business was really difficult. So I've spent a lot of time like kind of going deep and trying to figure out, what drove me to get to that point, and how to deal with the fact that we had to lay off 50 people. It was tough. So it was a really great moment before he was born. Spent a lot of time meditating. We lived on an island on Lake Superior for like a month, and I built trails.
Oh my God!
I got back to running, which was really a gift.
Wow!
And then he was born in October, and then have been focused on being a dad. Moved to Boulder, spun back up that consulting business in the background. But I've shared with a lot of folks from CMC. I'm kind of in this like exploratory phase of. I've done a lot in the technology world. I really like helping people build businesses, but I'm not sure what the next like permanent phase looks like. So if people want to talk about like being in that exploratory phase, I've spent like 2.5, 3 years like living in this exploration of personal self, but also career. So
I have to tell you, I don't know if the camera's going to capture it, but your story gave me goosebumps. That's amazing. I had no idea, to be honest with you, about like any of this. And I just got to say, like, I've been in situations too in my career where I've let ego take over, and then I've been humbled real quick. And like, it hasn't all been roses for me in the 15 years, and I can't thank you enough for sharing. And also, like, I got to say, because I actually didn't know so much of your story. Like, I saw you in SF at, the
Yeah.
CMC parties and whatnot, but I didn't know what happened sort of since.
Right.
And like what I'm hearing too is like for so much of your story, whether it was, hey, we're going to go to Berlin, like scratch that, we're going to
Right.
go to national parks, and like, we didn't know, like, we didn't know Maddie was pregnant, and we were in Minnesota, and like all this stuff. It's like you're really good at figuring things out on the fly,
Thanks.
and like sometimes, like, look, I think that the other thing is that, and I've seen this firsthand for myself and for other people, is like it's not like you were responsible for Web3.
No.
Right? Like, right, like you're just a surfer riding a wave, and
Right.
sometimes these wave like crush really good surfers.
Right.
It is what it is,
Yeah.
But man, thank you so much for sharing. That's an amazing story, and I have no doubt that you are going to crush whatever comes next.
Yeah.
And I hope people reach out to talk to you about all this kind of stuff, because it sounds like you're also at a really exciting time.
Yeah, and I think to your point about those humbling experiences, I think a lot of people share all the positive, right? And like what you see on LinkedIn, what you see on social media, etc. It's hard to really understand like what is going on in the background, and a lot of people don't share those humbling moments.
Totally.
But I think what is really nice about the Claremont community is that, at least for me, I've always felt like it was a safe place to be extremely vulnerable. And the people that we all went to school with had our best interests at heart.
100%.
And, like you and I haven't caught up in a really long time, but like I know that you're carrying sort of that vulnerability with a lot of.
First of all, you're right. We haven't talked in a long time. You got back to me let the record show. I texted you. You texted me back within 30 seconds.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
Shout out to the CMC community just for like, hey, even though we haven't talked in a long time, you got back to me right away. And yeah, like some of this is, I got to be honest with you, man. Like I reached out to you because we did the class notes together for a little bit. Right. And I just like wanted to catch up.
Yeah.
And I looked at your LinkedIn and it was like Patreon. Of course I know Patreon.
Yeah.
Like AppDirect. Of course I know AppDirect. CEO. And I was like, amazing. And it's like, actually, we've had some hard times.
Yeah.
And like, you know what? Everyone shows their highlight reel. Right. I'm not living all highlights. I've had hard times. You've had hard times. Everyone has, and so, man, thank you for sharing. That's a really beautiful story.
Yeah.
Well,
thanks for putting this together. Like this is really fun.
Yeah. We're coming up on time.
Cool.
I want to transition. Let's, instead of, forward looking, present looking, let's go back in time.
For sure.
I got a couple questions to ask you that I've asked every guest.
Yeah.
And you allowed multiple answers. First one up, favorite CMC class.
Favorite CMC class. I think a lot of people will mention this, Congress with Pitney.
100%.
Yeah. That was just like a completely transformative class. And so different in the way that he ran that class. And the bonds that we created amongst the people who were part of like that Congress class were really awesome. And also, I mean, Pitney is just an amazing professor.
Yeah. I was so my follow up was gonna be your favorite professor. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I'd imagine Pitney.
There are a few. Pitney obviously was one of them. But I was also thinking about when you said favorite class, Manfred Kyle's macro. I think it was 101, but just
you're not the only person to have said that. Yeah,
and I think that the class was impactful, but Manfred's way of thinking was also really impactful. I often think about his first class where he had us all write a paper around what is the happiest country in the world, and the 25 different perspectives on what happiness means, and then trying to translate that into like macroeconomic data.
Oh, that's cool.
That was a really cool way of getting people to think, and then also try and translate that into your view of the world. Yeah. So Manfred, Pitney. I mean, there's just way too many to name.
I know. There are too many to name, but I appreciate you naming two. And I know if we had more time, you could probably name 30.
Yeah, totally.
On that same note, favorite CMC party?
Yeah. I mean, this one is like where you can name 30.
Easy.
Yeah. I mean, obviously 601.
My favorite.
It also is just such, it wraps up CMC so well, it's such a different school than literally every other school out there. And you would like invite friends or you tell people about it. And they're like, wait, what? You had a keg drop at 601?
Yeah. Yes, like the ball, like the New Year's Eve ball drop. Yes,
that,
I know.
That it's your entire like it's the entire school. It's
Entire
freshmen
right,
up to
totally.
seniors, and
Totally.
how sort of there wasn't any like division amongst the
No clicks.
yeah. Uh,
Yeah.
so 601 Pirate Party was obviously just
Another great one.
uh,
Yeah.
and I at that time I really did like to consider myself a pirate and drank way too much Captain Morgan's. So that kind of fit my personality.
Yeah.
Yeah, but there's
Amazing.
I mean, yeah, there's literally too many to name.
Yeah, you could name like, look, if we went back into the party informs,
Yeah,
shout out Brian first
yeah,
and Yohei, we could probably dig up some parties like, oh my God, I totally forgot about that. That was
yeah,
awesome, you
yeah.
know?
Well,
Yeah.
Brian for his bachelor party, he wrote a party inform for his bachelor party,
Oh my God,
and
that's amazing.
he had a lot of friends that were not CMCers, and they're like, "What the heck
What
is
is
this?
this?
Like, this is so bizarre." And so we had to all explain it to them. It's like, no, this is what we do.
When I tell people like, no, CMC really was one big happy family.
Yeah,
There were no cliques. Everyone was friends. And every Wednesday or Thursday, someone would send out an email
yeah,
letting everyone know where all of the parties were.
yeah.
And it was a school sanctioned email
Right.
that like the dean of students knew about. Like this was an expected thing.
Yeah.
People are like, what are you talking about? I'm like, I'm talking about heaven
Yeah.
is what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
Favorite CMC memory.
Favorite CMC memory. Oh, that's a hard one because
Yeah,
I mean, my whole experience there was just
I
pure
know.
delight. Darn, I didn't think about this one enough.
It's, there's too many good answers. You don't
Yeah,
have to answer because it's like the truth is I think that like, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but like, man, how do you separate out these parties from some of these classes from just like walking to the dining hall with your best friends?
yeah.
Like, it's
I,
so,
I've been thinking a lot about snack recently.
snack is a great
Yeah, but
memory.
more just that like uh, everybody at CMC worked really hard. Everybody was really
Yeah,
driven. But there was a moment every day where you could kind of come together and sort of share your stories of the day,
100%.
and have like a really casual and mellow moment with all your classmates.
Totally.
Yeah, so
Totally.
it's not necessarily like a specific moment, but just a lot of those really deep connections that were forged off of this awesome routine that we all built together. So yeah.
That's a great answer. That's a
Cool.
great answer.
Cool.
I know I got to let you go in a minute. I got 2 questions left. They can be pretty quick.
Cool.
First, who do you keep in touch with, and who do you want to give some shout outs to?
Yeah.
I know we've given a lot of shout outs so far on the episode.
Yeah, I mean, I've kept in touch with a lot of folks.
Yeah.
San Francisco was just a CMC mecca for a really long time.
Yeah.
Most recently, over the past couple of years, have seen Brian First a lot. He's been out in Colorado
Yeah.
a decent amount.
Yeah.
Keep up with Tui quite a bit.
Love Tui.
Keep
Yeah.
up with Alexander Ray Scher. He's one of my best friends.
Love Rashir. Yeah, for sure.
And not in 2009 class.
Yeah.
Recently had
That's okay.
Helena Bodmiller and Sarah Beatty. They were
Oh my
Sarah Beatty
God.
lived
Shout out to
in
both of them.
Colorado.
That's
and
awesome.
Helena was visiting Sarah, and so came and met Bowen.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, and went to Guy's wedding last year. So saw
Shout out Guy. Yeah.
Karana and Caldwell, and
Yeah.
so that was really fun. But
That's awesome.
yeah, keep up with a lot of folks, and yeah, it's just the nice thing is we're it's 15 years down the yeah 15,
Yeah. Crazy.
15 years, and everybody has done such amazing things, but also is the same person, and so
Dude,
you quickly jump right back into it. So
let me tell you something. I've had 10 of these conversations,
yeah.
and it's as if everyone has become their like even more themselves.
Yeah.
It's been amazing to see.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
Okay. Last question, then I'll let you go. Finish this sentence for me, because again, I'm hoping people reach out to you that haven't talked to you in a really long time.
Yeah.
Someone should slide into my DMs to chat about.
Cool. If they're exploring what they want to do next, definitely reach out to Chad. If you want to learn about Boulder, I would love to have more CMC folks in Boulder. And if you want to talk about adventure, getting out on a bike, run.
Hell yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, look, I'll raise my hand. I'm someone who's trying to figure out what's coming up next for myself. Cool. So I will have to book more time with you. Yeah. But Brem, dude, thank you so much for making the time. Yeah. This was awesome. Great catching up. And I'm so happy for you, man. You got some exciting months ahead of you.
Yeah, thanks, man. Well, thank you so much
Yeah,
for planning this. This was awesome.
my pleasure.
Looking forward to seeing the other videos as well.
My king.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for making time.
See you
Take care,
later.
brother.
Bye bye.
Bye.